All right, everybody, it's your boy John Paul, the Island Hipster. You already know we are back for another episode of the Stand Up Sit Down with Moi. And I'm super excited about this next guest. This is how excited I am. Usually I like to be freestyle off the cuff when I give my little intros, but for this person, I had to write it down because that's what they deserve. And it's my show and my podcast, and I can do whatever I want. So, our second guest on the Stand Up Sit Down is a teacher, a lover of art, an author, a philanthropist, a great laugher, a healer, and a meditation pusher. And that's why I call her Wheatgrass, Dub G, Black Alicia, my sister and fellow wolf, Alicia Mathlin, everybody. Welcome to the Stand Up Sit Down.
John, that was the best opening. I don't think anyone has ever introduced me quite that way. And so that is up there as number one. Thank you for having me. It's so nice to see you.
It's always great to see you. So this is what I thought I would start with. I specifically had a start process because I usually am all over the place, but this is what I wanted to start with. So I love that you call yourself the meditation pusher because it sounds kind of hoodish and gangster, you know what I mean, all at the same time. And for the people like me who in the beginning resisted the idea of meditation, because now you know that I try to meditate, on a consistent basis. It piqued my interest, the name Meditation Pusher. And I know you didn't get it out of a Wu-Tang name generator. So how did you even come up with the term Meditation Pusher?
Yeah. So I had done my yoga teacher training. I had done learning how to meditate and things of that nature. And I loved meditation so much that I was kind of lost with everything that was already out there for meditation, because meditation isn't new by any means, right? But everything that was out there, I didn't resonate with it. Like I grew up on hip hop. I grew up, kind of having like this hustler kind of gangsta energy, like you mentioned.
Black Alicia.
And I thought, what would make meditation something that would feel new and fresh for people, or for people like me for whom the existing model didn't work? And so I kind of just dipped into my heart of hip hop, and I just thought, I wanted meditation. I was younger, mind you, when I started it, but I wanted meditation to feel like something you could be addicted to. I wanted it to feel like
bars.
I wanted it to feel, dare I say, like really good drugs, So
I'm not crazy in thinking that, like I said, it felt for me, for someone who wasn't into meditation before and thought it was corny and hokey and hippy dippy-ish and stuff like that. So there really was a method to the madness in calling it
absolutely.
Okay, so I knew I wasn't crazy. And speaking of like it being something that you wanted people to think that you could, again, not that it was drugs or whatever.
Yeah.
In listening to you talk, I realized that I kind of make connections where I don't even think connections are supposed to be made. And when I think about the word, and again, because I work with words and you spell out meditation, I realize if you changed the one letter, it goes from meditation to medication.
Yeah.
Do you see a correlation in that for people or anybody that delves into?
Yeah, I actually like what you did there, because I've never thought of it that way.
Really?
So I love the idea that it can be perceived through that lens, because there is a healing quality to meditation.
Agreed.
Right? And so, I think what happens is people think that I sat, it didn't work, I'm not good at this, I'm not returning to it. I'm bad at meditation, I'm not good at it. And what people lose is that how it actually works is the showing up for yourself every day, that commitment that you make for yourself. And it's through that, right? That kind of insistence on your self-worth by showing up, that's when the healing begins.
Because I've actually heard you say that there's no wrong way to meditate.
No, I don't think there is.
And and even for me, like and I'm sure you hear this a million times when it comes to people asking you about meditation, and it's in the beginning, if you don't know, or you think you don't know what you're doing, it's you always think you have to quiet your mind, which is virtually impossible to do.
And it's not what the goal of meditation is, actually. I always teach that you're trying to manage your thoughts. To be able to sit and to abandon all thinking Nobody can
impossible.
really do
Yeah,
that.
it's
Even,
impossible. Yeah.
I've been meditating for over a decade. I still can't do that.
Yeah.
What you're trying to do is to be able to manage your thoughts in the sense of, can I bring the things that are actually important and of the present moment to the forefront? And can I have the thinking that is rooted in the past or rooted in our anxiety about the future? Can I bring that back to our, like, the background of our mind, so that we're not being pushed and pulled by all these thoughts that are coming from different directions of our lives,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like the kids say, life be lifing sometimes,
Yeah.
for me, what meditation has become, in my rediscovery of it, because
Mhm.
you've always, again, you were literally the meditation pusher, and even though you weren't trying to, you're like, hey man, the first hit's free, man, and you're not lurking in a corner going,
Yeah.
hey man, here's a mat, you want to buy a mat?
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't like that,
exactly.
but now that I've grown to appreciate it more, even just from the bracelet that you had given me, that says just breathe and be here now,
Mhm.
how I feel about meditation in relation to how I feel about it, because
Mhm.
again, I think it's a personal relationship,
Mhm.
is that sometimes it feels like, when you're in the rain and you're wet and you're cold,
Mhm.
and then you get a small break because you see somewhere like warm, and then you kind of dry off for a little bit and you
Yeah.
feel warm, and then you're like, all right, back into the rain.
Mhm.
But because you're warmer and drier for that little bit, you can go back out. Like, that's kind of what I feel like meditation feels like
Well, it's a
for
kind of
me.
refuge, right?
Yeah.
Like, for the mind. We're so overstimulated all the time. There's so much noise. There's so many people in our lives that are vying for our attention. And we have these devices that are designed to consume our attention. And so what we're all reaching for is, like, how do I find quiet enough to hear my own voice, quiet enough to make decisions, quiet enough to separate the influence of the past from my present moment? How do I let go of my inherited beliefs? We cannot do any of that unless we have silence. And most of us don't know how to be quiet any longer.
It's true though.
Yeah.
Like, everything now is just noise, whether it be in person or digitally.
Mhm.
Like, I also find the ironic part, like when people complain about having their like social medias hacked, and they're like identity theft, and the ironic part about that for me is social media is the identity theft.
Absolutely.
Like, not the person hacking you, but
Yeah.
the fact that you are now trying to keep up with everybody else by almost kind of doing the same thing, or the trend, or the hashtag, or whatever it is, and
I have another lens for that to
bring
consider.
ting, bring ting.
We shrink ourselves for social media. We don't allow ourselves to be our whole self or who we
Correct.
completely are, right? So the identity that we cultivate for social media, it's not who we are. So there's the theft, but also in doing so, we shrink who we are in real life. We're not as good at communicating with each other. We're not as good at
Mm-hmm.
being present or sensitive. I don't know if you've noticed, but more and more people are sensitive about themselves, but
Yes.
insensitive about others.
Yes.
Instead of having compassion or even empathy, right? And so we're narrowing ourselves to fit in these, tiny squares
Literally.
or stories or reels, right?
Literally.
Like, we're trying to say that our life is a snapshot of our
Yeah.
existence. And that's just not what we were designed for. We are whole beings. We're dimensional beings, meaning, whatever your belief system is, your mind, your body, your soul, like, there's so much to us, and we are being, reduced to these platforms that have no interest in who we really are or showing who we really are.
So, in talking, I love your explanation and your definition of how, and your lens, because I'm always looking for new ways to see things.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I love about life more so in general, that I think a lot of people aren't taking the time to enjoy, is seeing life from different angles. And I'm old. And by old, I don't necessarily mean like, rickety old. I just mean like I've lived a while. And I don't know, because as a kid, I probably wouldn't have thought of these things, or in my younger years. the world seems to be way more divisive than I've ever remembered it at any point in my life. And again, we're spanning 5 decades of my life, so I don't know whether that's something that I am misconceiving or
No.
misconstruing.
No, I think you've got that perfect. I would offer that we're more divided because we are more like, as humans, we're looking for tribes. That's what we
Correct.
do.
We're
That's where
tribal.
we began.
Correct.
Right. And so now we have this medium that allows us to find our tribes very quickly. We no longer have to actually get to know people. We no longer have to sit with being among people who think differently than us. We can actually formulate our tribe with little effort, right? And what we're forgetting is that it's actually quite normal to be among people who disagree with you,
Agreed.
who have different views,
Agreed.
who have different backgrounds. And so because we are constantly being exposed to our own ideas and not being challenged or exposed to different ideas, when we are confronted with something that's different, it's offensive. It's too much. Like, we can't deal with it. It's uncomfortable. Like, we have no skills any longer to deal with that kind of stuff. And so what happens is we retreat further and further and further into ourselves and into our tribes. And because everybody's doing that, right, we are divided. So it's not something that you're misconstruing. Like, it's really happening that way.
And I always find that crazy to me, because it's like I one of the things I say all the time is no one learns from winning all the time. And finding your tribe and only exclusively hanging out or being around those kind of people, I think certain skills get diminished. So
Yeah.
like, I consider you my AI, and I don't mean artificial intelligence. I call it Alicia intelligence. You're my AI.
Thank you.
So how much of and again, and the reason I enjoy talking to you is you're my Yoda. You're my Black Yoda. You say some of the deepest shit that I've ever heard. Because I've also, the other nickname I've come up for you, on top of everything, is you're in a select group of people I call spiritual panty droppers.
Oh my gosh. I did not see that coming. I'm going to say that.
And the reason I say that is because you have an incredible way of getting people's chi moist by just the things you know, how you speak, the way you communicate, and you're okay with letting people be themselves, even though it might not necessarily be, as you say, the same lens that you say. And one of the coolest shit I've heard you say, like, super recently, and that's why I write these down, because I don't want to fucking mess this up. It's here somewhere. I got it.
While you're looking for that, I just really want to tell you that I received the spiritual panty dropper title.
But you're not exclusive. It's you and a few other people.
I feel so honored to be a part of that club. Thank you.
So the thing that you said that insanely resonated with me, and I'd love you to share and maybe even expand on that, is the secret to manifestation is patience.
Yeah.
That was the dopest shit I've heard in a long time. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we hear the word manifestation a lot.
Correct.
And people use, I manifested my new car,
Correct.
or I manifested my my man, or all this stuff. And I don't think anybody knows what it actually means. I think they think it just means getting what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But it leaves out the value of not getting what you want. And so when I speak about it through the lens of patience, and this is where meditation fits in, because you will find that people who manifest superbly are people who meditate. Because when you meditate every day, day in and day out, what you're doing is refining your thinking. That's one of the attributes of meditation. And by refining your thinking, you're building up your strength, your self-worth, because we don't manifest from our vision, we actually manifest from our beliefs. So if we're not cleansing out our beliefs, right, because we're always pulling beliefs from our parents, our upbringing, bad relationships, right, we're always taking in new beliefs. Mm-hmm. And so what meditation does is it helps us refine our beliefs and bring us closer to our highest self. And when I say highest self, I'm not talking about thinking that you're better than anyone.
Correct.
It is about remembering that you're not inferior to anyone, right? And so you're meditating every day. And through meditating every day, you start to build your self-worth, which is your self-respect. You start to make choices from that day, from that place out in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the mindfulness comes in. And when you are living in a mindful way, meaning all your choices are in alignment with what you really want, right? That's a kind of discipline, self-respect, self-worth. You start to manifest or get what you want, not because of some magical thing that happened, but because you have brought yourself into alignment with what you really, really want. And that is where patience comes in. It doesn't promise that it's going to happen
Correct.
tomorrow or within a week. It could take years. But because you are so confident in yourself, you have your self-trust, you're moving through the world with your self-worth, things start to come to you faster, right? So it's this idea that manifestation is the highest expression of your self-worth. That's what I try to teach.
And do you think people realize that, or people have no concept of? Because, like you said, I exactly what you said. I know people who get things and be like, I put that out into the universe. Like when you hear the word universe and the term manifesting or manifestation, how do you? Are they comparable? Is one real and not real? Like, or do they work in tandem? Is there such a thing as a universe? Is there such? Because I know energy is real.
Yeah.
Because I always tell people,
and it can be measured.
Yes.
Right? Scientists can measure energy.
yes, and I always say you can't create it. You can't create it. You can't destroy it. You can only exchange it
and feel it.
and feel it.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things, which is part of what Stand Up Sit Down is I just want to exchange energies with people that, I've come across in life that, I think will make my journey better. And the journey being better doesn't always mean good shit happens all the time. But like I said, is manifestation, and I know this means nothing, that wasn't correlated at all.
No, there is.
Is there manifestation in the universe? Is there a thing?
So I think whatever higher power you believe in is where we start to connect.
Mhm.
So for a long time, I used to say the universe, right? In recent years, I've grown closer to God. I've always said God, I've always believed in God, but I also had this idea about the universe, right? And what I've learned is that for me, my meditation practice serves my relationship with God, which serves my life, and it starts to become a circular, energetic experience, right? And what I mean by that is, so whether you say nature, the universe, God, so we're using that interchangeably. For me, when I'm at my lowest moments, I start talking to God to bring me back online. Right? So we're using meditation as a way to quiet ourselves. And then once we're able to do that, that's when we can start to have conversations with higher power, right? And if you don't believe in a higher power, that's when you can have a conversation with your higher self. We cannot do this if our minds are noisy and loud, right? And so where manifestation comes in is in those moments where you are feeling the friction of moving away from what you know you really want, right? What you've been calling in. That's when I start to have that dialogue. So for me, sometimes I say, God, cleanse my heart. Just cleanse my heart. Or I'll say, God, correct me, right? Because I have said what I wanted for myself, right? I have said what matters to me, right? And every day there are going to be things that pull me away from that vision or those goals.
Life be life.
Yeah. And so where God, nature, the universe come in for me is that when I'm feeling alone and like I could be influenced by external stimuli, I go back inward And that's who I have the conversation with, because, sometimes you cannot just have a conversation with yourself, right? Because
You're
yourself
the
will be
worst
like,
person to have a
yeah,
conversation
yeah.
with.
Sometimes you're like, oh, I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm in line right
Yeah.
now, right? And so for me, having the conversations with God and knowing that that's who's part of my life that I'm held to and that exists within me, that's the power I move with, I breathe with, I live with, right? And so that power, with my own discipline and my own self-worth and making choices from that collective,
Mm-hmm.
is how I'm manifesting what I want.
That's pretty dope.
Mm.
So speaking of that, you talking about sometimes you can't talk to your have the conversation with yourself just because those are the conversations you don't want to have because the
You're
other
tired
person,
or you're hungry
yeah, or
or
the person inside here and the
yeah.
past trauma. So when you think about 12-year-old Alicia who had never met this age Alicia,
Right.
what do you think 12-year-old Alicia would think? And because I know it's been an insane journey for you, which presently you're this super refined into speak languages and studied in France and all that kind of good stuff, and you're a Scarborough kid.
Yeah.
And a Scarborough kid that has gone global and has gone international, and the circles that you run in, did 12-year-old Alicia foresee any of that, or was that not even on the radar for 12-year-old Alicia?
Yeah. I haven't thought about her in a while, so thank you for bringing her up. I think 12-year-old Alicia would be pretty shocked at the way my life turned out. At 12 years old, I was very, very quiet. I was full of self-doubt, and I was very, I felt very unprotected in the world and untethered. I think, we all have different childhoods and
Correct.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know my parents did the best they could with what they knew.
Correct.
But I remember just feeling very alone all the time. Sometimes literally, but also I had to figure everything out, on my own. And I made a lot of mistakes.
But that's how you learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was in a rush to grow up. I was in a rush to show that I was mature and that I knew things, because I was constantly feeling like I had to prove myself. I had to prove how smart I was. I had to prove that I was worthy of attention. I had to prove that I was going to be successful, because at the time it felt like everything in my life was telling me the opposite.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have a chance.
But nobody has the tools at 12 to figure that shit out.
Yeah.
Like I heard someone recently say, which I never really thought of before. It's funny how as we get older, failure is looked at as such a negative thing, but how much we praise kids and babies for failure. Like if you're trying to walk, you got to fall.
Yeah.
You're trying to ride a bike, you got to fall.
Yeah.
You're trying to do anything, you know what I mean?
Imagine if a baby stopped after the first fall.
Which I think is crazy. So as we get older, it's we no longer are as generous with our praise and encouragement for falling or having missteps, and I think that compounds as you get older. I'm assuming that's kind of what trauma, feels like.
I think there's a lot of layers to that, in the sense that there's two things happening, because remember, there's always the life we're making and the life that's unfolding, right? Those two things are always happening. And so
She says the dopest shit all the time.
thank you. Let me not lose my train of thought, though.
The life that you're making and the life that's
you're
unfolding.
making and the life that you're unfolding. And so what happens is we tend to shift our gaze towards the life that's unfolding, and we forget about the life that we're making. And so we forget that we will fail. That's perfectly normal, and it's actually a good thing. We will come up against friction in our lives. We will come up against challenges, right? But the older we get and the more we focus on our external life, that doesn't leave room for failure, for imperfection, for learning, for growth, right? Because we're negotiating our self-worth with the outside world instead of within ourselves or with God, right? We are assuming that everything that identifies who we are has to come from something else or someone else,
Yeah.
rather than turning the lens inward, turning that gaze inward and cultivating our interior life, making that a rich and nourishing place so that when everything out here is failing or people are abandoning us, or rejecting us, we still have ourselves
Yeah.
in a solid and
Yeah.
real way. And so when I fail or make mistakes, I can just refer to myself and go, oh, how very human of me.
Because the dopest shit I heard recently too is
Mhm.
you can't achieve self-actualization when you're in survival mode.
No, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
That resonates with me. I feel in some ways like I've been in survival mode for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning is that I've had to redefine what self-actualization actually is.
Mm.
How many times can we say actually? But right? But in the sense of again, like even though I have some knowledge around these ideas, every time my life arrives at a moment where things level up, the difficulty levels up, I kind of have to reset and go back to beginner's mind and say, okay, what am I learning from this?
Yeah.
What am I gleaning from this? Because if I try to come to a moment assuming that I know everything, that moment will last significantly longer. Those challenges, the pain, the hurt, the trauma, as you said, will last so much longer if I'm trying to beat the moment with what I know or knew.
Yeah.
As opposed to just putting all of that away and asking myself, what is being revealed to me here?
Yeah.
About
What's the lesson?
myself.
Yeah.
About myself, about my beliefs, about my life. Like, I think it's really important to interrogate yourself. And I don't mean in that like negative criticism kind of way, but just to ask yourself, like, why am I feeling this in the moment? Why am I having resistance to what's being said or asked? Why do I feel challenged or offended? It's not the other person's job to explain that to me or to change for me. It is up to me to identify what is it within myself that is causing this.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to do because it's asking you to let go of ego.
That's the word I was going to drop. It's the ego inside of you is I find what makes people sensitive sometimes, and it's not. I find it you're not necessarily upset with what the person is saying to you. It's what it is that you know somewhere deep inside of you that you haven't dealt with on any level.
You're upset with how it's making you
like,
feel. Yeah,
I
exactly.
will fight you. That kind of shit. But
Because
it's really not them. It's a you.
Of course
thing.
it is. You have a childhood in which you experience things, and we've all experienced things for which at the time we did not have the language or the emotional intelligence or the experience, right? And so when things happen that remind us of those things and we respond from little Jean, little Alicia, we are not in the present moment, right? Because we're responding from the past. And B, we are responding from a wounded self.
How do people grow out of that, though?
Meditation. No, I'm kidding.
That's the clip.
Yeah.
Because like I find it super, and when people view themselves, they really do view themselves as their younger selves that, as you said, had no protection, no tools or skills in dealing with these things. Like there are those times where I know I'm super smart, deep, cool life, pursuing the dream that I wanted as far as, comedy and art and all that kind of stuff. And then every now and then somehow I get reminded, whether it be by someone or something that was said of, the skinny kid with crooked teeth and giant hair. And is like, how does that kid not, like, how is why am I still feeling that when I've got all this stuff? Like, how do people move past that kind of?
Yeah, I think there are many ways, and I think finding the way that's right for you is usually the best way. And so what I could offer, I know I said meditation very quickly.
Mhm.
Meditation to me can be a complementary tool to anything.
Mhm.
So I think you should always meditate, whether you're working with a therapist, whether you're engaged in like cognitive behavioral practices, or you're just finding yourself on a yoga mat. What meditation does is it allows you to sit with not only your present self, but your past self and your future self, right?
Mhm.
And so I have had to go back many times to 12-year-old Alicia or 6-year-old Alicia and 8-year-old Alicia to let her know that we're okay and that we're in charge now. And that kind of sovereignty that we now feel is an assurance or an affirmation for the younger me who was always scared
It's
or who
almost some "I got you."
yeah.
Yeah, that's some deep shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Spiritual panty dropper. I'm
Yeah.
telling you.
And not everybody gets there in a straight line. And
Correct.
I want to be clear about
Yeah.
that. But what I have found is that so much of my childhood stuff was about not feeling safe.
Mhm.
And so much of my work as an adult is to let myself know that not only am I safe now, but I also know how to cultivate safety, a mind of safety, a body with safety, a heart with safety. Like it's because your younger self never goes away. It's not like you have that conversation and it's over.
Yeah.
What you're actually doing is letting that child in you know that you are capable of parenting them in the way that maybe they wish they had been parented as a child.
So I think this might be one of those things where it dials back to the question. So one of your favorite people, my wife, who's also one of my favorite people, Jeanette had a
She's
question.
my favorite. Like, I love your wife. Do not cut that out.
Not
I
at all.
love her.
I'm gonna put that on a t-shirt.
Shout out to Jeanette.
Shout out to Big G.
Yeah.
Shout out to Molly, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So her question for you is you've always been a strong advocate for women from early, whether informally or formally, whether through yoga classes or your She Should Know program. She wanted to know when and how that seed was planted for you to be that advocate for women.
She would know to ask.
Then I
that
tongue
question.
kissed her real hard after she. No, I'm kidding. Wasn't that deep.
I think for me, so what happened to me in my late 20s, I had achieved what I thought was success. I had a luxury vehicle, I had a 6-figure income, I had my own place, I was living it up. I was
Is this the rock star Alicia that you had told me about?
I'm the rock star now.
So
This was the gangster Alicia.
So after this, I want you to tell my favorite story after you.
Oh
tell
gosh,
it.
I hope I remember.
I'll remind you what it is. I'll remind you what it is.
Okay.
I'll remind you what it is.
Speaking of drugs, no. So in my late 20s, I had achieved a really high level of success externally. My interior life was, I want to say shit.
Yeah.
It was really bad. I had done everything out of ego to prove to everybody that I was smart, successful, and all the negative things that I had been told were not true.
Yeah.
Because look at me. I have all the trappings of success.
You're on some fuck you.
Yeah. Some strong fuck you energy.
Love it.
Yeah. I had a red crocodile leather briefcase. Okay. Like, let's not get it. Like, it was really bad. And I want to say my life imploded. I woke up one day with the most incredible amount of pain, and I found myself needing to go to the hospital, and I was in the hospital for a week, and nobody would really tell me what was going on, or I didn't know how to self-advocate either. Like, I didn't know how to ask the right questions, and they pretty much sent me home. There was no
No diagnosis,
no
real? No?
diagnosis, no
Wow.
insight. I had an infection that they dealt with, and then they sent me home. And so I went back to my life as it was. I went back to, at the time, I was a real estate agent. So, it's late mornings, long nights, and then I'd go out and party with my friends. And, you get home at 2, maybe you sleep, maybe you don't. Have a Red Bull just to get up, then go have an espresso just to start life, and then
Your
go,
energy up.
yeah, go to the gym, 5:30, go, 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 nonstop. Okay. Fueled by espresso and Red Bull. And I went back to it. A year later, exactly the same thing happened. And I went to the hospital, and that doctor, he's retired now. I've kind of tracked his career because I feel like he saved my life. He said to me, "Nothing's really wrong with you. You just have to change your life."
Really?
Yeah. Doctors didn't
Like
talk
a
that.
medicine
A
doctor?
medicine doctor. I was like,
Not even like a friggin'
no,
dude
not a
in the back of
naturopath,
a...
not a
Yeah.
homeopath.
Wow.
Like at the hospital, I won't name it. I don't want anybody to
Yeah.
get in trouble.
Yeah.
And he said, tell me about your relationship. And I said, well, it's volatile. It's, because in my 20s, I thought love was like a
Correct.
roller coaster ride,
Yeah,
and it was all this
yeah.
intense energy and uncertainty. So I told him about that, and he said, "Your friends?" And I said, "Well, I have a lot of frenemies, but I don't really have like close friends,
Yeah.
right? Maybe one. I don't have a great relationship with my folks because it's all based on a facade that I'm putting forward, And he said, "Yeah, you need to change your life. What is manifesting in your body is extreme stress and anxiety and depression." And I didn't even know I was depressed that much.
Most people don't.
No, I was a highly functioning person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was successful.
Depressaholic.
Yeah, how could I be depressed? I mean, I have
I got all this
things.
shit. I got a red crocodile bag,
Yeah,
bitch.
yeah. I mean, there's no way I'm depressed.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, if you don't change your life, you're not going to survive." And I was like, "Okay, well, that I'll listen to."
Yeah.
And for some reason, I went home, I got the message to change my life completely. Like, it landed in my body. I broke up with the person I'd been seeing for 10 years. I cut out most of my friendships. I quit my job. And mind you, these are not instructions. Okay.
Yeah, no.
I want
again,
everyone to know, do not do it this way. I changed the way I ate cold turkey. So I cut that years-long addiction to caffeine, cold turkey. Do not do this, okay? Because the headaches, the migraines, the jitters, the sweats, it was total withdrawal. It was painful. You'd go to my house and I had champagne in the fridge and Red Bull in the fridge. I never had any food and vodka in the freezer for rough nights. Like, I wasn't a whole person taking care of themselves in the world. I was a teenager with too much money.
Who at 20 knows that that's where you're supposed to?
I mean, you should eat.
But again, if you don't feel like you have to eat,
yeah,
you know what I mean.
Exactly.
And that's the
caffeine
beauty,
suppresses your
the gift and
appetite.
curse of youth is thinking that you're invincible.
Ignorance is what it is.
Ignorant invincibility. That's what it is.
And so I changed my life drastically, painfully, and I was able to do it because I had been financially successful. So I had resources to make those changes. But I didn't know what I was going to do with all this change. And my mom invited me to a yoga class, and I went, and I got to the end of that yoga class, Sean, and I bawled my eyes out.
Really?
Like, I couldn't stop crying. I was lying there in Savasana, and I was convulsing with tears because I had been holding in so much, and I had never known how to release or permission to let it go. And my body was saying to me, like, we've been holding everything.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It has been a lot, right? Like decades of anxiety, depression,
guilt,
rage, anger. Like, I had a lot of anger, and I felt lighter after all of that. And I had never felt lightness before. I had never felt a kind of relief from the intensity and the grip of my interior life. So I went back and I kept going back. I kept going back and I started to feel better. I started to build connection between my mind, my body, and heart. And I started to get to know myself because I had spent so much time being who I thought people wanted me to be.
Being that fake person.
Yeah.
Being an avatar, basically.
An avatar
Yeah.
or a reactive person.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we cultivate our identity in reaction to things, you know? And so my existence was a reactive existence instead of a responsive existence or an authentic existence. And so I just became a different person, but that person was somehow myself,
Mm.
you know?
It's like being reborn almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a year later, I got a job in Paris and reverted back to my old self within moments.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Yeah.
Because I was in Paris, I was on an expat salary, I was working in the luxury industry, late nights, alcohol.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Red Bull. I literally, like an elastic band, bounced right back.
It's like muscle memory type shit.
Yeah, because I had been that other person for so much longer.
Yeah.
And the temptation or the test returned. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's get back. Let's get back to that fun we were having. It's been nice.
Yeah.
Those vegetables were great. But
some of this shit.
I need some steak frites.
Yeah.
You know, I need some red wine, you know, like I need some Fernet. Like
goddamn France, man.
Yeah, exactly. And luckily, a year later, my body was like, yeah, we're not doing this again. We are not doing this again. And I came home and I started a new life because that was the real me. Like I tasted it again. Like I tasted that again. And thankfully, my body was like, yeah, we're not going to do this.
Which is kind of cool. Which one of the things over my little journey that I've realized, like when you remove all the negative stimuli, is that the word I'm looking for?
Sure.
You know, whether it be alcohol, whether it be shitty food, whether it be shitty people, whatever it is, and you do it for a certain amount of time, your body is like, hey, I feel great.
Yeah.
And then the second, like if you cut out meat from your diet and then, you know, for like say 3 months or 6 months, and the second you eat meat, your stomach is like, yo, this shit's getting
hard.
out. We're getting this shit out.
Yeah.
Like literally.
Well, meat stays in your body for 36 hours. You cannot digest meat quickly. It's impossible.
Damn.
Which is not a conversation about whether or not we should eat.
Yeah,
meat,
no.
It's like
this
really
isn't
understanding,
one of those.
Our body is always reaching for health. That is what it's seeking.
Really?
Yeah. And
I like
so,
that shit.
yeah, you're either giving it things that helps it with its mission, or you're giving it things that impedes the mission. That's it. That is health in a nutshell. And I know people are like, no, but there's this, there's that. And we like complexity because it's a wonderful form of procrastination.
Nah, man. Give me simple.
Yeah.
Give me simple shit.
Everything is meant to be simple. Our bodies, our brains have not evolved with everything that's being thrown at us every day, right? Like simplicity is actually how we thrive. Structure, routine,
Correct.
Order
Correct.
is how we thrive. I remember during the pandemic, a good friend of mine is a psychiatrist, and a group of psychiatrists had gotten together and tried to distill, like, what are the 10 things we can tell people to do to help them ride this wave of uncertainty that we're going through. The first thing on that list was to get up and shower every day. Just to get in the habit of engaging with your life, like making a choice to consciously engage with your life, whether you were leaving the house or not.
Yeah.
It was a way of signaling to your inner self that we're here and we want to do this.
Yeah.
We want to do this, right? The second thing was to have a routine. Everybody's routines are different, but we need routine. We need structure. That's how the brain is designed, right? If we are just sitting there staring blindly into screens or whatever have you, Netflix marathons, things of that nature, all we're doing is overstimulating the mind and understimulating the body. And we're not meant to exist that way. So the mind starts to be overstimulated the rapid thinking strengthens, right? That's a way of building
Because it
that
starts.
muscle. Yeah, you're ping ponging all over.
And you're hitting
You're
switches.
so
You're turning
yeah,
switches off that aren't supposed to be turned off, and
yeah,
it's locking. Wow.
and you're leaving one on,
Yeah. Constantly. Yeah.
right?
Wow.
And the body is just kind of sitting there like, hey, we're supposed to be a part of this.
Yeah.
We're meant to move through life, mind, body, and heart. And so we go through life overstimulating the mind, understimulating the body. So what comes from that? Anxiety, depression. Self-doubt,
Yep.
insecurity, and an inability to communicate effectively and also listen effectively. So that has a ripple effect into our relationships with colleagues, right? And so the third thing was exercise, moving your body. We have to metabolize our lived experience through the body. And exercise is different. Like I know you love F45. Right?
I love that walking.
Yeah, you move. Like
and
that's what I'm saying.
Speaking of, the F45 thing for me is exactly as you say. It's simplicity.
Yeah.
When I go there, it's as opposed to a regular gym where you kind of like, all right, I'm gonna do 3 sets of this. It's like for me, it's tell me what to do, tell me how long to do it, let me get the fuck out of here.
And you're fully engaged. Though.
Literally.
But you're fully engaged for that moment. You've set yourself up to be fully engaged for that period of time, right? And for me, it's yoga and Pilates. Yes. Like I love those. I'm doing strength training now because I've noticed that there's been an accumulation of grief in my body, right? And strength training is the most effective way to metabolize grief. I bawl my eyes out. Yes. Because when your muscles...
You be lifting weights and crying and shit?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when your muscles contract, you produce a chemical called myokines.
See?
And it's the only time you produce this
Alicia
chemical.
Intelligence by AI.
It's the only time you produce this chemical. And
when you're lifting weights?
When your muscles contract. It's a chemical that breaks the blood-brain barrier and helps us heal our brains. It helps fight chronic disease, chronic illnesses. It helps us learn from our experience. It's also called the hope molecule. And you only get it from muscles contracting.
I told you, you're the person, whenever I speak to you, you say some shit that I've never heard of before. And you're like one of the most, and I don't want to say intelligent, like you're smarter than everybody, but you're always so informed. And that's why I love, like, my goal sometimes is like, let me just throw some shit out and see if she got some shit for this.
See what comes back.
Let me see if she know this shit. And then you'd be like, well, that's called neurological blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's called, like, you even know it's called the hope gene or hope molecule. I was like, God damn, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you say that, like, that the whole, because I know there's a list of 10, but the first 3 I think is what saved, and again, I'm not speaking for anyone else other than myself. It's what saved me in the pandemic, because in the beginning, because of the uncertainty of nobody knew how long or what was thing. Yeah. So like most people, I fell into that trend of all the bullshit that everyone was doing. It was like, hey, you got to do 10 push-ups, and if you don't, you got to do a shot, and you know, that shit was all fun for a while. And then after a while, it became, I needed to find purpose. And one of the things I realized I don't want to say super quickly, but quickly, was trying to keep the alignment of mind, body, and soul. And it's always weird when one of them isn't, you know, like if it's here or if it's here. And for me, it's, I try to use the other 2 or the other one to relift, you know. So it's reassuring, because I didn't even know that. And it's reassuring to know that the routine and the physical and all that kind of shit. So it reminds me that when I do veer off the path, which is okay,
you must veer off the path.
Yeah, it's okay to come back, you know, as long as you have those tools and shit like that to do that. So, which I think is things. One of the things I actually wanted to ask you too is, how do you propose people, because we were talking about like goals, like you were talking about when you were in your 20s and you thought you had reached all these things that you wanted to reach. Like when people set goals for themselves, and sometimes when they just like hyper focus on that and then you reach it, like you had like all these dreams, and when I go from here and I get here, I'm going to feel like this. And when you don't feel exactly the way you dreamed it, because how would you know when you're dreaming it, and it's either a letdown or what the fuck do I do after this? Like, how do you propose people deal with that and navigate that?
Yeah. So one of the things that meditation has taught me.
Back to meditation.
Back to meditation.
See
because
the through line?
It saves me. It just saves me. And it's such a low maintenance thing. You don't need to
True.
have any money. Like
True.
you wherever you are and wherever you're breathing is where you can meditate, right? And so one of the things I've learned through practice is to take everything as neutral. The good things are neutral, the bad things are neutral,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so what I've learned with that is that when the bad things happen, I'm not quick to say, oh, what am I learning from this? I don't rush to that. I don't think that that's healthy because I'm not encouraging anyone to bypass their feelings. I actually just sit with what I'm feeling. I sit with the sadness. I sit with the disappointment. I sit with the anger or the frustration. And I allow myself the space to be present with my whole self. Because I don't only want to be present for my higher self,
Mm-hmm.
my better self, my successful self. My self that is going through things deserves the same kind of attention as myself that is succeeding.
Say that again.
Myself that is going through things deserves the same level of attention as myself that is succeeding.
That's some dope shit right there. I think that's lost on a lot of people.
Well, because we're typically mad at our unsuccessful self. And I say unsuccessful self with air quotes, right? Like
Mhm.
we're always angry at that version of ourselves. We're always disappointed, right? We look at that person as other. That's not the real me, right? Like I'm this person. And that takes us back to identity, labels, exterior stuff. But inner me actually is sad right now. Inner me is actually angry right now. And I need to deal with that. I can't just put that away. I've learned that your body will hold on to it.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know? And so how I navigate disappointment, setbacks, or heartbreak is one, I don't take it personally. That's the first thing. I don't blame myself
Mm-hmm.
for the things that happen. I sit with the emotional experience of what has happened, and then I start to think about what my first next step should be. Is my first next step a healing step? Is my first next step a redirect? Like, do I need to call someone? Is my first next step an appointment with my therapist? Do I need to get out of my head and go for a walk or move my body?
Mm-hmm.
I simply ask myself, what is my first next step? That's it.
Super simple.
But that comes back to that idea of choices
Yeah.
and self-respect
Yeah.
and discipline, you know?
It's one of those things where I have these conversations sometimes with people where, when someone, I don't want to say regrets something, like if you make a choice and it doesn't work out or whatever. And I find a lot of people always think that if I had only made this other decision, this would have happened. And I always find it super weird that, like, why do you think that that's exactly how it would have played out?
Thank you for saying that.
Like, it's the weirdest thing to me. Like, you've romanticized, like,
Yeah, well, it's easier,
Yeah.
right? We have no evidence.
no, none.
No evidence that if we had done that other thing, it would have gone the way we thought it would have gone.
And if anyone has ever watched Star Trek, the time continuum, if you go back and check, that's why the prime directive is you can't fuck with other planets because you'll
100%.
change their entire evolution to what the natural progression would be.
But you're also robbing yourself of the strength of the present moment. If you're spending all your time thinking about, well, this could have been this if I had done that, rather than taking the time and that energy, because you're using up a lot of energy, right? Taking that energy and reclaiming it for the present moment. That is the only way we can transform the past, is what we do in the present moment. And that is the only way we can create the future, is what we do in the present moment. So why we spend all our time diverting energy, thinking, resources to the past or the future blows my mind. Because in this moment, right here, right now, this is our highest opportunity to be our best self.
Yes.
This is when we're our strongest. This is when we're our most powerful. Only in this moment. I have no idea what tomorrow holds for me.
Correct.
And I know that the past has passed.
Correct.
I can't do anything about
Correct.
that. But I know that right now, sitting here in front of you, with you, I have an opportunity to bring my whole self to this moment. And that is why we're here. Not in this podcast in this moment, but why we're here right now in this life is to be with each other, to really be with each other and with ourselves. And that's where I believe, and everybody's contemplative practices are different. But for me, I have learned all of that and I train that through meditation.
That's why it's super important. Okay. One of the things I love most about you is your laugh. And you'll know one of the instructions I had for you was to brush your teeth before you came. Not because I think you have horrible oral hygiene, but because if you want to laugh, I want your teeth to look the best on camera because, you know.
Thank you.
High def and whatnot. And I'm because I'm a comedian, and not exclusively because I'm a comedian, laughter is such a social, it's such a social exchange of energy, and it makes me feel better to know when people are and to see people laughing, even if it's not because of me, but people laughing, because I think what it does is it stress levels come down, and the only thing you can focus on at that, as you say, in that present moment is what hits you here. You have a great sense of humor. You always have. You always laugh in the right places.
Thank
See?
you.
There you go. So one of the things that I wanted to try doing in this podcast, me being a stand-up and it being called the stand-up sit down, is past, present. There are no wrong answers. You don't have to appease my ego by saying me. But who are three of your favorite comedians, past, present, that you have experienced?
So before I answer that, I want to just say that laughter resets the heart. And that's why it's so important. And that's why I think comedians are necessary. They're a necessary part of the culture. It's a necessary art form. It's a necessary practice. And so I think that anything and anyone that makes you laugh, that brings that kind of joy, that kind of effervescence to you, you should engage with. And so when you asked the question about the three comedians, my first instinct was obviously to say you, right? And so you've crossed that out. You won't let me say it. But so number one on my list is Dave Chappelle.
Okay.
Number one.
Okay.
Do you want me to say what I
say
appreciate
everything?
it?
Say whatever it is. Just talk.
I love Dave Chappelle's ability to make us think, make us uncomfortable, and make us laugh.
Yes.
I think those three things together are important because,
Correct.
again, back to what we were talking about, like we're so used to platitudes. We're so used to like this incessant need to say the right thing that we have lost all sense of saying the real things. And so what I appreciate about Dave Chappelle is that he always says the real things.
Yes.
Whether you agree with them or not, to each their own, but he's consistent with that.
Yes.
And I appreciate that authenticity.
I appreciate that authenticity from him because that's how conversation works.
Yeah.
You know, most of the time people misconstrue people talking at each other for people talking with each other or to each other.
Yeah.
You know,
well, social media is constantly talking at
Correct.
each other. So we think that
Correct.
that's how we should communicate now.
And what I love about Chappelle is right, like I said, whatever you construe as right or wrong, or you can't say that or whatever, is the fact that he is saying his truth. And what we I find society no longer allows people to evolve from, just because I thought this 6 weeks ago or 6 years ago doesn't mean I feel the same way, you know, after having a conversation with somebody or after experiencing something.
Well, that's because, in my opinion, it's because we don't like to deviate from our labels. How dare you be different? How dare you grow? How dare you evolve? How dare you change?
Yeah.
How dare you learn?
Yeah.
Right? And for me, I'm always interested in a person's whole journey. I don't want the version of you that agrees with me.
Agreed.
I want to know all about you
Yeah.
and teach me something. I meet with people with what I call a beginner's mind. That comes like from Zen Buddhism, but it is the idea that like when I meet with you, I want to know about you. I want to know how you think. I want to know why you think the way you think. I don't need you to think the way I think. I don't need you to be convinced that the way I think is better, or I have no interest in that. I'm not that insecure.
Yeah.
My beliefs are my own. I'm confident in them, but I also have a kind of humility. So it's like a confident humility whereby I can be with you and not have anything in me be shifted or stirred up because you disagree. I mean, how would I get to know people? How would I make new friends? How would I build community?
And how would you have a different, as you, which is I think I'm going to start using now to impress people. How would I have a different lens to see something?
Yeah.
And the ironic part about people having phones everywhere is everyone's looking at the same thing, but through their different lens. So if you go to a concert and you see all these people, it's just all these different angles of the same shit.
Yeah.
And you acting like, hey, I was here. Motherfucker, I was here too.
Yeah. I just want to stand there and enjoy the concert.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in seeing it through the filter of my phone. I want to be there. I want the real experience.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm not interested in mediating the world or other people through platforms or devices.
Yes.
I want the whole thing.
I agree.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Chelsea Handler.
Chelsea Handler, really?
I
Did not see that coming.
Love Chelsea Handler.
Did not see that coming.
I don't care what anyone thinks about it.
Again, there's zero judgment.
I know
I
you're
like
not
Chelsea
judging
because
me.
Chelsea says whatever the fuck Chelsea wants to say, which I think is great.
That's what I love about her.
And dare I say, and I'm not one of those. I think, I have no other thoughts on female comics other than I think they should get more respect because as a comedian of color, one of the things I always say that comics of color and female comics are the same because they're judged immediately on a visual level before anything comes out of their fucking mouth. Yeah. As they walk on, she's probably going to talk about periods. And it's like...
It's so reductive. Like,
you're such a dumbass.
I like Chelsea Handler, just as you said, because she says exactly what's on her mind. But what I appreciate from her is her sovereignty as a woman. She is her whole self. Take it or leave it.
Yep.
She is her whole self. I remember she was in an interview. I'm going to say the story really quick, but it stuck with me. It stuck with me.
As long as you need to tell it. Got nowhere to be.
She was in an interview with Piers Morgan, and he was terrible.
Can't stand that fucking guy. Such a dick.
And she told him exactly that in the interview on air. She's like, "You're really bad at your job.
Yeah.
You're not even asking me any good questions." Yeah. And he was so taken aback that this woman was questioning him, interrogating him on the quality of his work, that his only reaction was to like, well, what about you? What about you? You're not doing very much. And she's like, it's not my job to do your job while I'm your guest.
That's hilarious, by the way.
It's hilarious. And also a lot of women have that experience.
Yes.
Right? You're not showing any interest in me and I'm doing all the emotional labor. I'm doing all the work. And I just found it so refreshing that she just called him out. Like, women partake in so many unnecessary, ridiculous, absurd conversations that lead to so much self-compromise to accommodate egos. To be a woman who can say, you know what, actually, I'm not interested in a mediocre conversation. Thank you very much.
You know how painful that is? To hear?
I've done it.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying. It's such a good line.
But if everything is about time, like I want to have a real conversation with you. And if I say that causes you to maybe rethink how you're communicating. I'm not saying it in a rude way, but let's really talk. Because if we're not going to really talk, we don't need to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that's all she was saying. And I find it really refreshing when women say the real thing that they're thinking and experiencing. And that one clip that I saw on YouTube randomly has really informed how I communicate in the world. And I deeply appreciate her for that. And also she makes me laugh.
Yeah.
So deeply, so intensely.
Yeah.
She's smart. She's very kind. You can see that. She's generous. She's warm, and she's real. What more could you ask for?
And I think that's one of the things I appreciate and love most about comedy is there's no wrong answer to who you like, which is why going forward, when I ask this question, I'm going to be super excited just to hear what people's responses are and who they like and what they like, because it's subjective.
Yeah.
You know, and there's literally no wrong answer, just like there's no wrong way to meditate. Who's number 3 for you?
Okay, I just want to say one thing. So 1B would have been Chris Rock. I just want to say that.
Really?
Yeah, I love Chris Rock.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. So 3, I have 3, but I'm going to say them quickly because I realize what the through line is in terms of why I like them.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the comedy that I consume is via Netflix. I want to say that
Okay.
very quickly. So I'm mostly watching people's stand-up specials, okay? And over the last 2 years, what's Nate Bargatze?
Nate Bargatze. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Joe Coy,
Yeah.
and
Super fun.
Hassan Minhaj.
Correct. Just listen to a podcast with him on it.
Make me laugh, cry,
Yeah.
all the laugh so hard I'm crying. And what I realize is that the 3 of them are great storytellers.
Yes.
And that's the kind of
Yes.
comedy that I think they put forward.
Yes.
And what I love about their storytelling is you just dive in, like you're with them. And the laughter comes from somewhere in your gut, like it's visceral. Because you recognize those
social
life
connection.
experiences,
It's a
right?
social
You
connection.
You know
connect.
that kid who
Yeah.
behaved like you.
Yeah.
There's such a clear connection, and so I deeply appreciate those 3 as my number 3.
and I think for me too, and I'm glad you said storytellers, because there was a time when I felt guilty because I'm predominantly a storyteller because I enjoy painting the pictures. I enjoy exactly for the reason that you said. You paint the pictures and the people feel connected.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's why people are like, sometimes you're long-winded. But the reason I'm long-winded is because, you
Context.
know, I'm context. And
We
I'm
need
taking
context.
taking time for detail.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, it can't just be finger painting and just.
But that goes back to the patience thing,
Yeah.
right? Like we don't know how to wait for
Correct.
the result. We think it should be instant.
But that's what the world is now.
Yeah.
Everything is instant. Like, it's insane to me that people no longer pay people at the grocery. Like, it's just like tap. It's like, how much extra seconds in your life do you need to scroll TikTok that you can't even be like, hey, thank you for this, or I'll take my receipt. That there's zero eye contact with these people who are doing the shittiest job.
Oh, yeah.
But they're doing it.
I had a very strict upbringing. I think part of it is having like a Trinidadian background. Like manners are like a really big
The whole Caribbean is very...
But I think Trinis are a little extra. But anyway, what I would offer is that it was almost ingrained in me. Like that was probably one of my first practices, you know, manners.
Yes.
And so
Very much so.
even now, I find it odd when people don't greet people, when people don't shake hands, when people don't look each other in the eye when they're speaking. Like your capacity for attention is really a measure of your character.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a time where we are our capacity for attention is deteriorating at a rapid rate, but we act as though there's nothing we can do about it. And for me, every time I engage with another person or an activity or a task, that is an opportunity for me to retrain my attention. And so whether I am engaging with the cashier or my friends or family members, you will have my full attention.
Which is true. I can attest to that. We've
Right?
known each other long enough to
I
know.
am uncomfortably
Alicia
looking you
is-
in the eye.
Alicia is, give me my hug.
Yeah,
Give me
I'm
my
all
hug.
in. Like
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
have this
yeah.
human experience.
I remember when we went to dinner, I think it was Easter, and we hadn't seen anybody in a long time, and we all had to test each other outside, and you couldn't wait for us to get our COVID results on the patio.
I was at the door like a puppy, like a
you were
puppy. Like,
literally
are you done? Are you done? Are you coming inside?
Let's hug. Come.
Let's hug.
It's
We can
hilarious.
hug now.
I don't care. He's
Yeah.
he's asymptomatic. It's fine. Let's do this.
Connection keeps us healthy.
Connection truly does keep us healthy, which is what I love. So as we wrap this up, once again, I want to thank you for coming out.
Thank you for
Two, I
having
want to
me.
remind everybody, meditation and what was the line? What's my first next step?
What's my first next step?
What's my first next step is something that I think I'll definitely remember. And to start this, when we came into the studio, I had messaged Alicia and I had told you to bring Sage, and you were like, Sage might fuck with our voices, so I'm going to bring Palo Santo.
Yeah.
And because I love how you explain things, because I've never heard of that before, what is Palo Santo and what does that do for us?
So I like Palo Santo because it introduces good energy to the room, right? So with Sage, what you're trying to do, hopefully, is remove negative energy. And I hope I'm not by any means saying it incorrectly, but you're trying to remove negative energy. Windows are open, you're flushing it all out, you're cleansing it all out. I like to seal that with Palo Santo. And the smoke of Palo Santo introduces good energy. It's a very resilient wood. And I like the idea of something that survives under any condition being the energy that you surround yourself with. And so I brought in the Palo Santo for us.
And I brought in the Palo Santo in the form of Alicia for us. She is my spiritual panty dropper. She is a meditation pusher. Make sure you check her out on all her social media and all of her website, and read her books and support one of my favorite people in the entire world, Alicia Mathlin.
Thank you so much, John.
Don't give